Before we begin, I just wanted to start this video by showing you a very weird plant that I've just acquired. And I don't mean weird as in the type of plant, but more just the way that this one's growing. I've basically got a friend who's leaving the UK, he's moving abroad, and he was like, do you want this jade plant? And just look at this. Isn't that just absolutely crazy? It's almost like some sort of weird bonsai. And I can see that it does need a little bit of rehabbing. It does need a little bit of TLC. For example, it's growing without drainage at the moment. So we will come back to this one in more detail in another video. But I just wanted to kick today's video off with this one because I just think it is so cool. Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well, and oh my goodness, I hope you are staying cool if you're in the UK because it is ridiculously warm right now. But today is another weird plants video, and this is actually part 3 now. I've done a part 1 and 2 that you don't have to have watched in order to watch this video, but if you do like this video and you'd like to go and watch them, I will link them down below. But yeah, for today's video, I have found another 10 amazingly weird, really unusual, really kooky, really fun plants to take you through, and I'm very excited to share them with you. But first, if you're new here, hi, my name's Claire and this is Yoli. I make videos all about houseplant care, sharing tips and tricks I've learnt over the years to help keep your plants happy and healthy. And yet again, I can absolutely say that since learning about some of the plants that I'm going to show you today, my wish list has absolutely increased. So I'm sorry, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it. So all of the plants that you're going to see in today's video have literally come as suggestions from you guys. As I say, I honestly didn't know about 90% of the plants that I'm going to tell you about today. They are all more or less new discoveries for me. So please keep your suggestions coming. Either message me over on Instagram, comment them below this video. It's really appreciated and it's really fun to discover new things. So yeah, I haven't put these in any specific order, like there's not a best to worst or anything like that, but all of them are pretty amazing in different ways. I've just tried to mix them up so that like we'll have a colourful one and then a carnivorous one, and then they've all got something a little bit different about them. But I will squidge over so I can put all the pictures of them just there. But the first one is the Drosera rotundifolia, which is commonly known as the round leaf sundew. And as soon as I saw pictures of this one, I was like, oh my God, it's like something out of Avatar or something you would imagine out of a fairy tale. It's just so, I don't know, so perfect and so magical looking. And this one's native to Europe, Asia, and North America. And the lovely person that actually messaged me about this plant on Instagram was from Denmark, and you said that this actually grows native to where you live, which is just incredible. I honestly can't imagine just walking out with Yoli and seeing this plant growing naturally because it's stunning. And it was actually quite surprising to find out that it was non-toxic as well, because often when you see a plant with really kind of bright, garish colours, for example, people often say don't eat red berries if you don't know what they are, it's because they typically do tend to be toxic. But then I guess the same thing kind of applies as it does to certain animals, like certain caterpillars, for example. They will often mask as toxic plants to avoid predators. So I guess that's a little bit of what's going on here. But yeah, so the kind of green bit in the center that you can see is actually, that's the leaf. So it's got round leaves with red hairs that secrete this dew-like substance, which looks so pretty. And it probably won't come as a surprise to some of you that this is a carnivorous plant. And those little dew-like bits that we see on the end are what actually traps the insects and makes them stuck so they can't get out. And like many other carnivorous plants as well, this one grows in boggy environments where the nutrients in the ground are pretty low. And as I say, this is very similar to, for example, Nepenthes, Venus flytrap as well, which I do believe this one's actually related to, very closely related to. They do tend to grow in very kind of dense, boggy areas that don't have many nutrients. And for that reason, it's often advised not to fertilise these plants. I think just because they typically make their own fertiliser from harvesting their own like harvesting flies and bugs and digesting them. That is their fertiliser. Often by fertilising them, you cause them to, for example, if you're talking about a Nepenthes, you cause them to lose their beautiful jugs, or beautiful jugs. Or if you're talking about a Venus flytrap, often the actual traps can drop off and you're just left with leaves. So yeah, for that reason, it's often advisable to just provide them with an environment that provides prey for them to be able to actually catch. And if you can't, if for example you don't have a fungus gnat infestation or anything like that, you can actually get things called, I think they're called bug bites or bug bits, that you give to, I think I'm right in saying you give them to like lizards and geckos and stuff like that, and they are meant to be kind of like a replacement for flies. I know a lot of carnivorous plants really quite enjoy them, and I have been kind of playing about with feeding them to my Nepenthes, and it's been working really well. So yeah, I don't know about this one because I've never grown this one exactly, but that would be my gut feeling. But as I just said, it belongs to the Drosoraceae family, which houses many carnivorous plants, including the Venus flytrap, and it is surprisingly hardy, which is something that really, I don't know, I found it really interesting to learn, because looking at this plant and knowing what I know about other carnivorous plants within this family, that is something that I would not have expected in the slightest. And apparently this one can actually survive below freezing temperatures. Like, it might lose its foliage, but it will still regrow. And I guess that does make sense, because obviously it says it is native to Europe, and like obviously England is in Europe, and here in the UK we do get some very, very, very cold periods throughout winter. And although we're not the hottest European country, I can kind of imagine that this one would have to be relatively hardy to survive outside of Asia, for example. So yeah, I don't know, I just found that very, very interesting indeed. And it's one that I've never personally seen available to buy, but I did a quick Google and you can actually get hold of this plant quite cheaply, and it can be grown as a house plant. I had a look online and I saw quite a few sources in the UK selling this plant for under £10, which I think is really good. And I've said a few times recently, I'm interested in kind of building up my carnivorous plant collection and just learning a little bit more about them. They're plants that previously scared me quite a bit because they can be much higher maintenance than some of the other plants in my collection, and they require slightly different things. Like, for example, they're very susceptible to the chemicals and minerals found in tap water. They respond very badly to that. They often need distilled water. But this is one that I am incredibly tempted to get for myself. I'd really like to give it a go, and I just think it's beautiful. So yeah, that is the first weird plant on today's list. And then another one that I had never heard of before is the Aluka Braata, which is commonly known apparently as the pregnant onion. And when you see pictures of this plant, you will probably be able to see why. And this one's native to South Africa, and again is quite commonly apparently grown as a house plant. I've personally never seen this one grown as a house plant, but it is more than possible. And it is a bulbous plant with strap-like leaves that almost look similar to yucca or dracana leaves. And if you look at them there, they do actually, I mean, they kind of look like a sprouting onion, but I think the almost like palm-likeness of them is quite similar to that of a yucca. I mean, even a palm. This one can also produce green and white flowers, and when they put out their flowers, the plant can actually reach up to 1.5 meters in height, which is really quite tall. I think that's knocking on around about, am I right in saying around about the same height as me? I think I'm 1.56, so not far off my height, which is pretty crazy considering it's, from the pictures I'm looking at anyway, quite a small little thing. But apparently the flowers really don't smell very nice, and that does seem to be a little bit of a common theme with a lot of the weird plants I've looked at in other videos, but also some of the ones that we're going to see today. A lot of their blooms seem to smell really, really foul, and I don't like, this isn't one that I've heard compared to anything like rotting flesh, for example, which we will get to. But yeah, apparently it's not a particularly nice smelling bloom. But it's actually part of the, I'm going to try and pronounce this correctly, Asparagaceae family, which is commonly known as the asparagus family. And the little babies that you can see in the pictures that and give it its common name, the pregnant onion, they're actually little bulblets that can be harvested and used to grow new plants. And apparently this one is actually quite fast to grow as well. And for that reason, it is quite, I mean, it seems to be quite readily available. Again, as I say, it's one that I hadn't heard of, but I did a quick Google and you can buy bulbs for just a few pounds here in the UK. I don't know if the price would change elsewhere in the world, but it kind of leads me to believe that it might be quite an accessible plant all round. It is, however, toxic, so that is definitely something to bear in mind if you've got children or pets or anything like that. And to be honest, I don't think this is a plant that I would typically go for. I think it's cool, but it's not like the first one made me go, oh my God, I feel like I kind of need that plant. And this one I kind of got, ooh, interesting. I don't know how I feel about that one. So yeah, I have no desire personally, currently, to add that one to my collection, but I do think it's really awesome. Oh, and then this is a fun one. This is a really, really cool one. And the person that sent me a picture of this one over on Instagram, they actually sent me this picture saying, I don't know what the name of this plant is, but it looks really cool. Look at this. And so I did a Google reverse image search to find out what it was. And I've said it before in other videos, but if you're not entirely sure what your plant is, like if you've got a plant with no ID, for example, obviously there are apps and stuff where you can check, but they can be a little bit hit or miss. I will often just take a photo and reverse image search it to try and get an accurate ID on the plant, which is what I was able to do here. And this one is a Cula Umbrella, which is commonly known as the wine cup plant. And I'm very familiar with Cula as kind of like a genus, and I was really surprised actually that I hadn't heard of this one before. And just looking at it, personally, I don't know about you guys, but I would never have guessed that this was a Cula. Like, I don't know, like the way that it grows is just so bizarre compared to like, I mean, even the one I showed you at the beginning of this video, like the jade plant, this is a Cula ovata. You would not look at them and think they were related in any way, shape or form. Like this one doesn't branch to start with. It's got one main stem and its leaves surround the stem. They're kind of like fused with the stem in the middle, which I think is really, really unusual. It's another one that's actually native to the Cape province of South Africa, and I think I'm right in saying that that is the same with the Cula ovata. I might be wrong about that. But yeah, also just looking at some of the photos, I'll try and, I was going to say, I've said it in other videos as well, I'm using Instagram photos to put here, but if you want like a really good overview of all of these plants, I do recommend Googling them. I'm just not able to use photos that I found on Google because of copyright reasons, but some of the photos that I'm looking at, it looks very, very red, like the underneath of it looks very red. And apparently that is simply due to the fact that that plant is receiving more light, which actually can be quite similar to the Cula ovata. Like I have grown this plant outside before, and when it's sun stressed, it can go very, very pink. So I would have thought that is the same thing happening here. But I have read, and this is very different to other types of Cula that I am familiar with, I have read that it can be quite difficult to grow and very susceptible to fungal issues. And I know that Cula as a genus can be quite susceptible to issues caused by overwatering, one of which being fungal issues. But I've never found any Cula that I've owned difficult to grow per se. I've always found them to be very low maintenance and very easy plants. So yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. And apparently also it typically blooms in winter, and its blooms can be yellow, orange or pinky red. And the pinky red is typically what you tend to see more pictures of online when you look it up. But also quite nice that it's a winter bloomer, because I quite like plants that just add a little bit of colour over the winter months. And it is also one that's toxic. So again, children, pets, be wary. But this is one that when I tried to look at its availableness in the UK, it was a real struggle to find. I saw one on eBay that was just under £40. I think it was 37 or something like that. That's the only one I could find, and the picture that the seller used was like an image that I'd found on Google, so I'm not sure how reliable that is. So it does seem to be one that is quite rare here in the UK at the moment, and I guess maybe that is because it's not the easiest one to grow. I don't know. Do you have any theories about that? Because it's one that I would absolutely consider adding to my collection at some point. I think it's so cool. I think it's awesome. So yeah. Do any of you have this plant? Do any of you have any of the plants that I'm talking about? Because if you do, I'd be really interested to know your growing experience with them. Oh, and this one is a beautiful one. Absolutely beautiful, and one that I hadn't heard of. Again, this one is the Sorilla SP Magenta Moonlight. And the lovely person on Instagram that messaged me about this said that, I know you and Ross are looking to build terrariums. This would make a great terrarium plant. And just initially looking at this plant, my brain went to jewel orchid. I was like, it looks so much like a jewel orchid, but it's actually not related at all to the orchid species. But it's a terrestrial plant native to Malaysia. Terrestrial just means it grows typically out of the ground instead of an epiphyte, which typically grows off other plants, like attached to rocks, attached to, yeah, as I say, other plants, instead of from the soil. Why am I struggling to speak so much today? I don't know. But yes, as I say, it is one that would work very well in a terrarium. It's one that apparently loves warmth, loves moisture. And I have read a couple of accounts on Reddit of people that really struggle to grow this plant in any other conditions apart from terrarium conditions. And to be completely honest, that like Reddit is the only source of information which isn't always that reliable that I could find on this plant, because there doesn't seem to be a lot online about it, and I don't know why that is. It's just not one that's very well known at the moment. I couldn't find out whether or not it was toxic. My gut would say, well, I mean, I would always say if you're not sure, assume that it is. If you've got people in your house or animals in your house that might be prone to nibbling, but it's just kind of fun to have discovered this as a genus, because I was looking, like as I was looking for the SP Magenta Moonlight, I was seeing so many other beautiful types of Sorilla. I think I'm saying that correctly as well, Sorilla. I was seeing so many other beautiful types that I'd never seen before, and now I've got loads that I would really quite like to get and build some beautiful terrariums with. But actually I can't see anybody at all, and I did have a very good scour of the internet. I can't see anybody at all selling it here in the UK. I saw a couple for sale in the US and Canada, which were going for around $40 for a small plant, which I guess if it's quite unusual, quite rare, then that is quite good. But yeah, it's not one that seems very accessible where I am from currently. Maybe if I was to go to some specialists, but yeah, I don't know. It's one that I've added to my wish list, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of digging on because I think it is just beautiful. Oh, and then this next one is another one that has absolutely gone onto my wish list. I love this plant so much. It is the TEF Cactus Geometricus, and it literally looks like, the thing that sprung to mind for me was snowballs, like snowballs stacked on top of each other. It's hilarious that this plant grows in this way, because to me, it looks so staged. I don't know, it looks so man-made, but it's apparently not. And this one's native to the deserts of Argentina and Bolivia. And most of the colours that you see in this plant, and the ones that you'll probably see that I'm posting here, are kind of a pale teal green, very similar to a lot of cacti and succulents. But under intense sun, it can apparently turn almost bright purple, which I feel like you would need to like be able to provide pretty highlight conditions for that to happen. I mean, like for example, desert conditions, but it's just such an awesome plant. And apparently it's also very low maintenance, which doesn't surprise me. It is a cactus, and desert cacti are typically incredibly drought tolerant and sometimes don't need watering for months on end. It requires very high levels of light. Again, doesn't surprise me. I'd imagine it would be quite slow to grow, but I don't know about that. And generally also this one is considered non-toxic and actually doesn't have many spikes. And if you look at pictures and you kind of zoom in, you can see it only has, like, although it's got, I was going to say like spike follicles, you can see like the dots where spikes should be growing from. You can't actually see that many spikes on it. But apparently it can sometimes have one or two, so should be handled with caution. And it's also capable of producing beautiful pink flowers. And if I can find some on Instagram, I'll post pictures here so that you can see it. But I'm looking at some pictures on Google and it's just so pretty. Really, really pretty. And again, in the UK, very sadly, not many places selling this at the moment. I scoured Etsy, which is usually my go-to for slightly more unusual things like this. And the only place that I could find, the only shop that I could find that was speaking about the fact that they might be getting it in stock, and I feel like I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot here because I have joined the mailing list, but it's Conservatory Archives, who I actually haven't ordered from before, but I've heard really good things about them. They are selling, or will be selling, sorry, 2 balls of it for £40, which I think, considering it's quite unusual, I think that's quite good. And you can, as I say, join their mailing list for when it's in stock, and then you'll be the first to be notified. So I have joined the list, and I hope we'll be getting one at some point because I just thought it was so cool. Oh, and this next one is so weird, like one of the weirdest ones I would say on this list today, and it's the Hydrohynor Africana. Yeah, as I say, one of the weirdest plants I've ever seen, and according to an article published by the University of Oxford, this species was actually apparently only discovered last year. But it's native to southern Africa and be found in the western coastal areas of Namibia, south to the Cape, and north through Swaziland, Botswana, KwaZulu-Natal, and as far as Ethiopia. And the first thing that I thought when I was looking at pictures of this plant is, I think it's in the second season of Stranger Things, if any of you have watched that. They've got these weird, they've got like bodies of dogs and they've got these weird faces that open up, and this reminds me of the creepy faces. It's not a particularly nice plant to look at, to be honest. And this plant's evolved over time to its current form and now actually appears more similar to a fungi than it does a plant. And it's also a parasitic plant, meaning that instead of getting all its nutrients from the ground and sunlight, it actually steals a lot of nutrients from other plants. And I am gonna put a picture in of what its underground root system looks like. I might be able to find one on Instagram, but if not, I'm just gonna use the picture that I've got right here because it's crazy. It's got these, I actually find them quite repulsive, and I feel like if you're someone that has got trypophobia, the fear of holes, you might also get a bit freaked out by this. But it's kind of got these big long root systems that have these bulbous kind of warty like things on them, and they are the things that kind of grip onto the root systems of other plants and effectively steal every bit of goodness that they're absorbing. So surrounding plants can be really badly affected by this. And although with this plant, the only visible bit often that you'll be able to see is the bit that we're looking at photos of that can be about that big, the underground root system, the actual size of it, the potential of it is unknown because, as I say, this is a very new discovery in the grand scheme of things. It was, oh bless you, Oli, she's dreaming. Sorry, getting distracted. It's adorable. But because it was only discovered last year, we obviously don't know a huge amount about it, but they predict that for a 5 centimetre, which is probably like that sized plant displaying overground, it could have up to a 2.5 metre underground root system, which is really crazy. Yeah, that root system to me is just absolutely gross. I don't know why, I hate it. And also apparently the actual bit of the plant that you can see, the bit that looks like fungi, that is foul smelling. Apparently it smells like rotting flesh and it's slightly disgusting. So it's probably not one that you would want to grow as a house plant, but I actually had a look online and I couldn't see it anywhere available to buy anywhere in the world as a house plant. And again, probably because it's a fairly new discovery, but also I just can't imagine the demand would be that high, in my opinion. So yeah, really, really weird one. And another really weird one is the Monera Unon, I'm gonna again probably get the pronunciation wrong, the Monera Unon, I don't know. And again, there is not a huge amount of information on this one. It looks kind of similar to the Bellmark's flame, but it's basically a natural mutation of Monstera deliciosa that was cultivated by someone named Camilla Holm and named after her daughter Uni. And apparently, and again, pronunciation, I really wish I could get this right, but the IAE at the end of the plant, as seen with many, is the Latin female ending meaning her plant. So essentially, she's named it after her daughter, and it's Unaie being her daughter's name followed by dishwasher, her plant, which I thought was really lovely. But yeah, I would have thought it would have very similar, I mean, in fact, I would have thought it would have had identical growing conditions, everything to Monstera deliciosa, seeing as it is just a natural mutation. In the same way as people take a certain type of anthurium, for example, the Delta Force, and then they clone it through tissue culture and preserve that variation of the plant. I'm assuming the exact same thing has been done with this, and for that reason it's really not very readily available to buy. Again, I did have a look and I saw the only place I could see it for sale online was in Austria, where like I did a online conversion. Apparently it appears to be retailing for what the equivalent of about £4,000 in Great British pounds would be. So it's not cheap to buy, and to be honest, I really don't like it. Like, I'm looking at it and I know people go crazy over the Belmarx Flame, and to be honest, I think the Belmarx Flame is beautiful. It's not something that I'm willing to spend the money on because I know it is still incredibly expensive, but I'm looking at this and I'm like, it just looks like a very unwell Monstera deliciosa to me. It looks, I don't know, a bit mottled and very skeletal, and yeah, it's not something that I would choose for myself, but it's still kind of cool. It's still kind of cool. And I've got 2 more to take you through, and before I do, I'm just going to change my camera battery because I feel like it's due to die. So bear with me 1 second. Fabulous. So then number 8 is one that actually I think every single time I've made a weird plants video so far, this one has come up as a suggestion, and I don't know why it has just narrowly missed the cut several times, but it is the Taca chantrieri, which is commonly known as either the bat flower plant or the cat whiskers plant. And quite a few of you messaged me about this one, and oh my god, it's absolutely amazing. Like, just looking at its flower, immediately I assumed that it was some sort of orchid, but in fact it's not. This one's native to Southeast Asia, and although it's not an orchid, apparently it does have very similar growing conditions. So if you are an orchid fanatic, if you feel like you've kind of really nailed orchids, then this is probably the plant for you. It loves bright and direct light between 15 and 25 degrees Celsius, very chunky mix as well. And actually, just looking at the flower, as I say, very orchid-like, but actually if you look at the foliage, and I'm looking at 2 pictures here of it kind of zoomed right out where the flower is not the main focus, it almost reminds me a little bit of Aglaonema. And then it also reminds me a little bit of, in fact, I've got it just here so I can show you it. Obviously, this is a climbing plant, so it's not exactly the same. But the Rhaphidophora foraminifera, do you know what I mean? Like, there's something about its leaves that is very, very similar. So, yeah, I just thought that was quite interesting. And actually, this is a plant that I think I would quite like to grow. I'm not on the whole a massive orchid person, and I think that is, I don't know, I feel like they can be a little bit overhyped, and I know the blooms aren't there all year round, but I love the foliage on this plant so much that I think I would enjoy growing it with or without blooms. So yeah, it's another one that's gone onto my wish list. And a fun fact about this one as well is that it frequently self-pollinates before the flower even opens, and studies have suggested that it may have evolved to do this due to infrequent bug visitation. And basically what typically happens in plants' natural environments is when they start to go into the female stage, when they're receptive, they will actually get quite warm, and that warmth attracts pollinators to come to the plant and essentially bring with them pollen, and they will pollinate, and then they'll either be cross-pollinated or self-pollinated. But with this one, they did a study where they monitored the plant very closely, and they watched which pollinators were coming to the plant, and the only pollinator captured visiting the plant was the trigona bee, which apparently is a type of bee that is just not very picky. It kind of goes to all the plants, and apart from that, they didn't clock any other pollinators in the area coming and seeing what was going on with this plant. So that is the theory behind why it might self-pollinate. Which is really quite interesting. And I guess it means if you would like to, I don't know, if you'd like to harvest your own seeds from a plant, then maybe this one, where you don't have to perhaps do too much to it to start with, could be a good one to start with. I don't know, I've never done it by myself, but it in theory makes me think that that would be the case. And for that reason as well, it is very readily available to buy. Like, I was looking online and I could see loads of places selling this plant, and most commonly it was available to buy from seed. So I'm kind of tempted to get some seeds and give it a go myself at home. But it was around about £4 for 10 seeds, which I think is really good. I think that's good. And yeah, it's one that you'd look at and you would think, or I thought at least, it would be much more expensive to buy. So I was really quite surprised by that. Again, it is one that is toxic though. So again, being wary there. But then, oh, I said I had 2 more. I lie, we've actually got 2 more now because this is number 9. But then number 9 is the Cibotium Baromets, which is commonly known as the golden chicken fern. And again, when you see pictures of it, you will absolutely see why. The rhizome at the bottom is basically covered in these really, it's almost like, and I know it's in the name, but it's almost like golden feathers. Like, it's very fluffy and it's kind of like a little chick. It's quite cute, really. And this one's native to China, and apparently the fluffy bit, the rhizome, that is actually used a lot in Chinese medicine for strengthening bones and muscles. That being said, there are not enough reports to say whether or not it's actually toxic. There's different sources I found online saying different things, and the ASPCA hasn't released anything on this plant, so I would not ingest this plant if I were you. But looking at the foliage it actually produces, it's like, I don't know, I think it's very pretty, but I don't think it's anything particularly special. Like, it kind of looks like the ferns that you see out and about on a UK walk. Like, it feels quite familiar. And although it's very feathery, and I do love ferns, I think they're really pretty, aside from the base of the plant, there's nothing that would, I don't know, there's nothing that I would pick out of a crowd about this plant otherwise, I don't think. But apparently as the brown trunk grows, it can actually get to be about 10 feet tall. It really it turns quite woody and trunk-like, which I think is really amazing. And I don't know any other ferns or like common ferns that I know of that can do that. So I think that's pretty incredible. And also something that really surprised me about this is apparently it's very easy to grow as well. And I don't know what this is based on. I just saw several sources saying that it was a very easy to grow plant. And ferns typically have a little bit of a reputation for being not difficult per se, but just a little bit temperamental and can kick up a stink quite quickly and are just not the easiest plants. Like, I've never heard someone say, oh yeah, that fern will be great for beginners. It's usually when you've got a lot of time to dedicate and you're going to be doing lots of watering and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I was quite surprised to find out that it was considered easy to grow. And again, looking online here in the UK, not many places selling it, but if you do want to buy one, I found a couple of sources suggesting that it would be around about £100 to £150 to buy, and that's without foliage. That's purely the chicken furry rhizome bit. So yeah, it's one that, I don't know, I think maybe when I've got a little bit more space, like right now, I feel like I have to be very, I don't know, I need to be very concise about the plants that I really want, and I can't afford to have anything that I don't truly love because I don't have space to house it. And that sounds like a bad thing to say. I feel like it is one that I might want to try growing at some point, but right now, with the space that I've got, I'm in no rush, let's just put it that way. But then number 10, this one is gorgeous. And I know I said earlier in this video that I wasn't a fan of orchids usually, but this one is the Bulbophyllum Elizabeth Ann, and this is a type of orchid native to south central coastal Brazil, and as I say, I absolutely love it. Like, I didn't know this was an orchid when I first saw it. I just saw Elizabeth Ann and then the picture, and I was like, oh, I really, really like it, and I actually would really like to get this type of orchid. And oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm saying I would like to get an orchid, but this one is really, really cool. I love how its flowers almost look like, I don't know, weird fingers. In fact, I'm gonna show Ross this when he gets home because I feel like he would adore this plant because he likes weird, he likes pink. I feel like it would tick lots of boxes. But yeah, apparently when it does bloom, its blooms can grow up to 18 centimeters long when kept in the correct conditions, which is really, really long. That's like that, which is just crazy. And as with, I think, all orchids, but it is an epiphytic plant. And I know I spoke earlier about terrestrial versus epiphytic. This is one that typically will, in its natural habitat, not grow straight out of the ground. It will grow attached to rocks. It will grow attached to shrubs, other plants, trees. So for that reason, it is one that enjoys a really chunky mix with a lot of the time not any soil at all. Like, again, as I say, very similar to standard orchid growing, but lots of bark, stuff like that. And the other thing that I was really surprised to learn with this one is that, again, it's very cheap to buy. Here in the UK, you can get one of these plants for between £12 and £17, which just blew my mind because I was really expecting this. I think because you don't see it that much, I was really expecting this to be significantly more. So yeah, I think I might get myself one of them because I really like it and I think I'm really excited by this one. It's also non-toxic as well. I'm pretty sure orchids as a collective are non-toxic. I'm pretty sure about that, but as I say, definitely not an orchid expert. But those are all the ones that I picked out today to show you. And as I say, please, please, please keep the suggestions coming because there are so many incredible plants. And every time I finish one of these weird plants videos, I think, oh, well, I'll do another one in maybe a year or something. And then I see all of these amazing ones coming through and I'm like, oh my God, there's so many incredible ones that I've got enough for a new video now. So yeah, it's just a really fun thing to be doing and I'm really enjoying it. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next video.
Stay sexy, plant lovers.